Kia ora, I'm Erin J. Doyle. Welcome to my channel. This video, as the title has no doubt already told you, is going to be quite different because it's going to be a craft video. I'm going to be making a book nook. These are, if you're not familiar, little like shelf inserts which look like a little portal to like a little miniature world that you put in between your books, and they look really cool and I love them, and I've been fantasizing about learning how to make one for 6 months easily. I even have a Pinterest board dedicated to them. As someone who's not particularly interested in Pinterest these days, that's quite the statement. And I didn't get around to it because I don't make models, I don't make miniatures, I have no relevant skills whatsoever. What crafts I do are all fibre based, so I really had no idea where to start, and I was accumulating ideas and thoughts, but mostly with no intention of actually doing it. What I thought I would do is wait until Christmas and then kind of, you know, suggestively hint at one of my siblings who is very crafty and can make anything, that perhaps they'd be interested in getting into miniatures and if they felt like making me a book nook. But then Christmas arrived along with a book nook kit. So a different sibling saw this being advertised online and thought of me, had no idea I was interested in it, and just sent it off and crossed their fingers, and I opened it and I was like, oh my god, so happy. So now I get the happy joy of actually making the thing, but from a kit, so hopefully it won't all go to hell because it doesn't require me to actually just instinctively know how to make tiny things. So I thought I would make a video of this because I'm sure, because I've seen this being advertised on Instagram, like this exact, not this particular model, but this brand has been advertising on Instagram for ages, and I'm sure other people have been seeing that ad as well and going, oh, but is it good, is it hard, etc. So I thought I would attempt to film the process of making it. Obviously that might turn into a shambles because I'm going to have to film it on my phone. My phone's old, so the footage might be a bit shitty, but we'll give that a go. But worst comes to worst, if I can't use the making of footage, I can at least give you a review when I'm done. So I'm going to go over to my neatly cleared off table and try and make a thing. I'm very excited. Okay, so I'm doing the Sunshine Town version. According to the box, there are 4 other designs. One with a train, one with like, it says Magic House, but it's kind of got brick edging, which, I don't know, I'm not a fan of that. I think my 2 favourite are these ones, the one that I've got, and then this one which has like cherry blossoms and a streetcar in it. So cool, looks like a good choice was made in which design to pick for me by my brother. Not surprised at all that he would know my taste. He's quite good like that. Okay. I think one of the other things I'll be interested in here is what the waste situation is like. I think that really bothers me with a lot of products, is what the packaging is like. Like, cool, it's a neat thing, but half of it was garbage you threw out, something. So if this is got a lot of waste, then that'll be something I have feelings about. Okay, well, it's tightly packed. Okay, I don't know what any of this is. I assume we've got stickers, or perhaps just coloured pieces actually by the look of it. According to the ads, you just pop everything out and snap it together, so I don't know if Mr. Craft Knife is actually going to be necessary, but at least we have a craft knife, so if it is, we're good to go. Okay, and then, ooh, are there bits? Oh, there's a tool, excellent. Kitties! Or perhaps dogs. It's actually, I think they're dogs. Small dogs, I guess. Okay. And little flowery thingies. And fake moss, excellent. Tiny brush. And this has, it does say on the back, hang on. I'm sure it said how many things lit up, or I don't know, I'm sure I read it somewhere. Okay, equipped with 3 controllable lights and big giant print right in the corner of the box. Excellent. So I'm guessing that's what all this is. Bit of a tube. Okay, I think what I'm gonna do is keep the bits in here, and we'll move that over there. And then we have it. Oh god, this may not be a single sitting project. Okay. Okay, no, they're supposed to be cats. White cat, yellow cat. They just got such pointy noses though, they look like little dogs, but that's fine. Oh, apparently the red flower is supposed to be baby's breath. The florist will choose not to comment on that. Open her up and see how we go. It does look like the packaging is super minimal, so happy about that already. Okay, come off my finger please. Okay, so we've got, yes, okay, this will be the mirror. Doesn't look super mirror-y so far, but maybe there's a film on it. Bit of sandpaper, good, I know what that is. Little flowery thingies. Oh, this will be the roof by the look of it. Okay, yeah, it looks like these just pop out. I don't think this will be a craft knife needed situation. Except for removing the packaging, because it's tight. Okay. I assume that's a tree. This is going to be like such a puzzle. Well, I mean, yeah, it is a puzzle. That's not really a surprise, I guess. I thought these were stickers, but they seem quite thick. Okay. Decorative-y bits, I assume. Ooh. It seems to match that. I don't know what any of this is. Okay, so that seems to go with that. In case this is out of frame, because I actually can't see what you guys can see right now. So it's all the same shapes. So I'm assuming that that attaches to that. There should be one to match that. Oh, that's just coming out all on its own, isn't it? Okay, we'll just let that do its thing. Okay, well that was easy in a terrifying is it meant to happen that way kind of manner. I need I-14, which is this bit. Not fucking it up yet. Good. B8 and 9. Where are the B's? Okay. The stickery bit. It's not sticker. 8 and 9. Okay. I'm a little bit cautious of destroying them, but okay, it's not too bad. Okay, the fear did not need to be there. This gets sandwiched between those. And then, whoops, P20 is our little brush. We should have white paint. I don't see white paint. I see little plastic doohickeys. Are we provided this white paint? Pigment. Yes, we're supposed to be provided with it. 2 little pots. Hang on, make sure there's nothing underneath. Good. Okay, sandpaper. Tube. Flowery sticker thing. More stuff. Completely unexpected not unexpected, unconvincing baby's breath. That's definitely just wires and screws and things. Okay, I don't see glue and I don't see paint. So it looks like we're missing a couple of things. So, off I go to the shops in the rain, I guess. I returned from the supermarket. I got a paintbrush because I figured it wouldn't hurt to have a second one. I got what I assume is PVA when they say school glue. I mean, what else could it be? And then I got a medium-bodied acrylic. So, $17 later. We're moving into montage mode because there is a lot of footage and I just don't think you need to see all of it. So we're going to go with a vague representation of the process here. You start off with assembling a lot of these small decorative elements. I think this is good because it does get you used to familiarizing yourself with the process and reading the instructions, and it means that you're creating neat little objects that are really satisfying because they can be completed quickly. So it's a good place to start, but it does mean that you are generating a lot of lightweight and fragile items that you then just put to the side of your workspace for hours. And for me that wasn't too much of a problem, but I imagine if I lived with lots of other people, like children, or if I had a cat, I can see these items being in danger of getting interfered with or lost. So if you were to do this and you had kids or a pet, I would definitely think you needed to have a game plan going into it for how you were going to keep those pieces safe before they were used. The instructions occasionally advise you to be wary of the orientation that you are using when you put pieces together, and sometimes it is really important and sometimes it isn't. There was an occasion where I had 3 pieces that had to be put together and I spent ages trying to figure out what the orientation was meant to be, and I finally concluded that there was no required orientation. In the instructions it doesn't actually show the pieces as having a correct or incorrect orientation. It just says to be wary of it, and after a bit of experimentation I was able to determine that it really didn't matter which way you did it, you couldn't go wrong. But then in another instance, when I attached the tree that you can see off to the right of the screen to the model, it did matter. So the tree sits into a small circular piece, and it looks like it should be nice and symmetrical and fit, but it is actually very, very slightly to the side. And by putting the tree in on the wrong orientation into that circular piece, when I put the circular piece in, it meant that the edge of that little piece of circular wood was actually interfering with where 2 other pieces needed to meet. And because I had very carefully glued everything and given it plenty of time to dry, I couldn't get it off without risking damage, so I ended up having to very, very carefully shave excess wood off with a craft knife in order to fix the mistake. So what I would suggest is, even though it seems like you don't have to worry about orientation too much, do be careful of it, even though the instructions start to feel excessive on that front. Another mistake I made was with the panels. You can see sections where they have a little outline and you are meant to attach a decorative element there. So what often happens with this model is that there is a thin card piece which will have an image like a menu or some books that's meant to go into that square, and then a door frame or a window or shutters is meant to go over the top, so that you have a nice 3D structure, and if you peer around it you can see inside the building. And even though the instructions are very clear on this, it's not their fault. I repeatedly forgot to put the coloured decorative element in before I put the 3D wooden pieces over the top. Fortunately, I was able to catch that mistake fairly quickly and fix it every time, so the end product was fine, but it was a bit nerve-wracking trying to very carefully peel pieces apart when I had put glue down to try and get those little decorative elements in behind them where they should be. As you can see, the instructions have you attach decorative elements to the 3 panels that make up the floor before you attach those panels to the main frame or wall of the box. The problem with this is that you then have lots of small delicate items which are really only attached with the tiniest touch of glue stuck to this little thin bit of wood that you have to then apply force to attach it to the back of the box, and it felt really risky to me. I found it hard to find the right place to hold on to those floor panels where I wouldn't damage any of the decorative elements but could also apply the correct amount of force to jam the floor panel into the side panels. So what I would do personally if I was to make one of these again is to read through the whole set of instructions and figure out which elements did in fact have to go on right at the beginning, and maybe keep some of those which didn't for later and attach them once I had already got the floor panels firmly attached, and so that way I could not have to worry so much about maybe breaking things. This is the dreaded panel that I did incorrectly. So the tree needed to go the other way there, but never mind, it looks fine in the finished product. A few times the instructions need you to cut something. So the top of the white lampshades needs to be very carefully cut off with a craft knife, and there's also a piece of yellow tubing that you have to cut into 2. The instructions tell you to cut off a piece and keep it in reserve, but that instruction is actually not correct. With the lampshades, the piece that it tells you to cut off and keep in reserve, like here, the piece that you've cut off is actually rubbish. You don't need to keep it in reserve. Similarly with the yellow tubing, it tells you to cut off a piece of a certain length and keep it in reserve, but the piece that you've just cut off, you don't keep in reserve, you use it. So there's a little bit of a weirdness there, but it is relatively easy to keep track of what should be done. Obviously the top of the lampshades are never mentioned again. The tube did catch me, but when you go to use the much longer piece that you're not supposed to use, you very quickly realise that it's just incorrect and you should be using the little one. This bookshelf was my favourite component of the whole piece. I just like how it's so many little tiny bits coming together to make quite an intricate whole. I did make a mistake on this, but I don't think it's in the video, so perhaps I shan't draw your attention to it. And here we have the finished product. This is how it looks straight on. You can see, I think quite obviously, I didn't do a great job with the light fixture on the left, even though there was plenty of yellow tubing left and I thought I could have another go. Because it was sort of heat shrunk and now very, very stuck on, I didn't think I could get that plastic off without resorting to using a craft knife, and I was concerned that this would cause damage to the wiring inside, so I decided that I was wiser to use the quite wonky looking, clearly I didn't know what I was doing version than completely destroy it by trying to redo it. Otherwise though, I think the couple of mistakes I'm aware of aren't visible when you look at it. I think you would actually have to go through the instructions to find the errors. So I'm pretty happy with that, particularly as my first time making a model. Those of you who are botanically minded might notice that the item I originally thought was an artificial moss is in fact real lichen. The little green pot plant next to the yellow cat is lichen, not a grass or a moss. It is real, it has been preserved and dyed, so it is quite squishy and it leaves a little bit of a yellow-green residue on your hands, so I found that academically interesting, but it also means once you've finished creating that component you might want to go wash your hands, just because, yeah, you'll be covered in a little bit of dye. You can also see that one of the first components you make, the post box at the very front of the model with the little bird on top, I did not sand. This was because it doesn't actually tell you to sand anything in the instructions, it just gives you sandpaper and assumes that you're going to think of that. And it wasn't until I had painted it that I realised that it had all those little spots on it and they were really obvious. So after having created that post box, I got very cautious and precise about the use of sandpaper. And I think it's a bit unfortunate that the one that I didn't do it on is right at the front, but I think at this point we're getting a little bit too nitty and too picky and we can just pretend it's fine and move on. Some time has now passed and my book nook is fully assembled and in place. I originally intended to put it onto the black bookshelf so that the light would be really effective, and I liked the idea of it being in amongst my bigger books. However, I realised that this would put it in the very centre of my bookcases, and I felt that a book nook needed to be like a little hidden thing off to the side, not a massive central focal point, so I ended up moving it to the white bookcase, which I think was actually the better choice. Also, because of the white frame for this, I think that the book nook kind of blends better into the whiteness of the white shelf than it did on the black shelf, where it was quite a stark contrast to the background. So, final thoughts. Unfortunately, I was never able to get the lights to work, and I just don't know if this was because I made a mistake when I was wiring them together. It's certainly not something that I've ever done before, or if there was something wrong with the kit itself. But I wasn't able to get them to work, tried changing the batteries, I even completely undid all the wiring I had done and attempted to redo it more carefully to see if maybe I had failed to get some wires into proper contact with each other, but I just couldn't get it to work. So unfortunately this makes it quite dark. However, I do wonder if my bookcases were in a room with much nicer lighting. I do live in a dark rat hole that requires the lights to be on at all times. I think if I was in a sunny, normal home, then maybe the absence of the lights wouldn't be quite so bad and you might be able to see more of the detail even without those lights in the book nook itself. However, I find this quite dark, so I had to come up with something to light it. So I've attached a big tangle of seed lights to the underside of the shelf so that those lights will shine down onto the roof, which has a semi-transparent plastic on the roof, so that the light will shine down into the base. So I don't know that you can really tell much of a difference on camera, but in real life at least I can now see down into the back of the book nook and get the enjoyment that I desire. However, it does mean that I now have this extremely well lit cavity, which obviously I don't have in any of my other bookcases, and it's a bit weird. So what I thought I would do is get a one of my darker coloured scarves and maybe drape it across the top of the shelf and do some kind of strategic drape across here to physically hide the lights when you're looking at it, but still have those lights shining down directly onto the roof of the book nook and hopefully lighting up the space still without being quite so brilliant. However, it's still possibly going to look a bit weird, so what I might do is look at getting those little round stick-on lights that I've seen people use and putting them in more of the cubby holes so that it's not just one weirdly lit cubby hole overall, but that's a future problem. For now, I think this will do, and I think it does a good enough job of lighting up the book nook, which is, you know, the priority for this. I went into this kind of expecting it to be like a, you know, a quick afternoon activity. I didn't expect it to be something that I would have to stretch out over multiple days. A lot of the reason why it took multiple days is because I was waiting for like glue and paint to dry, but I still had imagined that it would be quite quick and easy, and I guess that's just something to be aware of, right? Like if I was assembling this in a place that I couldn't keep it out for a week, then that would be really irritating. If I started it thinking, oh, I'll be done in half an hour, and then, oh no, it's 7 days later and it's still taking up the coffee table. But that probably would have been obvious if it wasn't my first time making a model, to be fair. I really enjoyed the fact that this ended up taking me ages, because whilst that was unexpected, it actually gave me like a fun project to do. This wasn't just a quick assemble, now I have the object I want. It was a project, so that was kind of fun. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Oh yes, there's one more thing about the design itself, which I think was a missed opportunity. So on this front panel here, there is this symbol that typically means like power button. That is not a button, it is just a piece of wood. The power pack for the lights is directly behind it though, so I understand why it's there. But I think because this panel is just a chunk of wood, it doesn't do anything, it's not movable, it's not a button, I don't think that symbol should be there. I think it's a missed opportunity. They could have put some other decorative element in there. The other issue is the power pack is right at the front of the unit, but it's underneath. So in order to turn the lights on and off, should you manage to get them to work, or to change the battery, you need to pull this out and either very carefully balance it on the edge of the bookcase and then sort of blindly unscrew the panel and do the things this way, or I guess like sit down and look at it from the bottom, or you have to tip it up. I don't like the idea of having to tip this up every time I need to do anything with the battery, because a lot of these little pieces are not locked in together. A lot of these decorative elements have a very small surface area held in place with a tiny dot of glue, and I feel like if you were to use this really frequently and need to change the batteries often, and you were flipping it up every time, eventually these pieces would become dislodged or damaged, and I think that's unfortunate. I think it would be nicer if this panel, which is just a little decorative bit stuck to the front really, if this was a little sliding panel that you could just push to the side, and then the battery access was facing the front, so you could just pull it out, push that to the side, do your thing, slide it back on, boom. I think that would be much better in terms of maintaining the longevity of this piece. So those are my gripes. Aside from that though, I actually think it's really pretty. What I like about this is that you get to see different details if you look at it from different angles. If you look straight on, for example, you can see an open door to the side here, and whether I'm looking at it straight on or from this side, I can't see behind the door. But there is something to see behind that door that you can only see in the reflection in the mirror. If I look at it from this angle, I can see into the window of the bookstore. If I look at it from the other angle, I can see other details on obviously this side of it. So it is like this interesting object that kind of forces you to kind of do this, to kind of appreciate all the little details, which I think is excellent. I think that's kind of the purpose of a book nook. It should be this little fun point of interest that not just gives you a glancing, oh yes, a decorative element. It should be something that draws you in and makes you look at it. So I think they have succeeded in that regard, and I appreciate all the little fine details. I just had a couple of issues with the construction. So I think it's not perfect. There are definitely some issues with it, but they're all sort of fixable, and I think a lot of them probably could have been completely avoided if I had known what I was doing at any time. Anyway, so I guess that's my whole review. Some pros and cons there, but I think overall I am very happy with it. I think it's quite a joyful, fun thing, and I like the fact that I had to put all this effort into creating it, because it gives me kind of, you know, the experience of making a thing, not just, oh yes, now I own a thing, which are two different things. I've used the word thing too many times now and I feel foolish. So I guess that's it. I'm really hot, so I'm gonna go and maybe have an ice water or something. Thanks for sticking out through the entirety of my journey in making this. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave it a like. If you want to come back next week and see what I'm up to, maybe hit subscribe if you hadn't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!